The button is pushed, and at some point, I think we're probably on. Do you see a thing that says we're on now, or are you just relying on
I
me?
do see that. I do
Oh,
see that. I see it's subtle. It's not like a big red light. It just says on the air. It's kind of small print actually, but I can see it.
I see. Your audio is out of sync with your video, so that's a
Is
thing.
it?
But I think it's probably just the internet's catching up, or maybe it's my computer. Doesn't really matter. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
You just went and
I
got your
s-
piece of equipment for your studio setup. That's exciting. Break through the
yeah,
resistance. Spend some
it
money.
was a, it was a breakthrough resistance. That really is, I think, one of the real rubber hits the road because there's lots of aphorisms and people will say nice things about follow your dream and go for it and don't quit and all this stuff. But really, at some point, it's like you gotta buy some gear, and that
That could be in the middle of like one of those follow your dreams. Like believe in
yeah,
yourself, buy the gear, buy some gear,
yeah.
and follow your dreams.
When you're really flighty and you have all kinds of interests and flighty, is that the right word? I don't never used that word to describe myself before. But if you have lots of sort of like, oh, that looks like fun, and that looks
Excitable.
like fun,
Excitable.
excitable.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
Yeah.
you
So if
pretty
you're
much. You're
yeah,
excitable.
I wouldn't mind if they put that on my tombstone.
Yeah. Well,
The Feff says he was excitable.
boys,
Just
start
leave it at
preparing the
that.
tombstone.
Leave
We
it at
won't
that.
need that. We won't need that for a long time, hopefully.
I would
Clearly,
prefer
obviously,
I would prefer that to sort of like
the boys are.
database architect.
Yeah, totally. The boys
I
are
would
down
re-
in the lab right now, starting chiseling. We got a
no,
word.
no, they're actually they're looking up and they're listening. They're saying, "What? All right, destroy the last tombstone he ordered."
Database architect is out.
No, I never ordered that one. Somebody would have had to do that for me. But yeah, so when you are excitable, like I am, and
Right.
I get excited about doing things, there is gear. There's
Oh
gear
yeah.
associated with everything, and that
Yeah.
is really where it becomes painful. And I dream of when I think of my personal communist utopia, it really is just a matter of like a gear lending library. So you can be excitable and get the things, try out the fancy cameras, do all this, spend a week on an obsession using actual great gear. And then I'm watching myself. I think I'm really out of sync.
You're super out
Is
of
it
sync, but
really weird?
it's like a mental game to try to like listen. It's like you have to shift into radio listening or podcast listening mode and then almost sort of ignore the excited expressions that come through a little bit later.
Yeah, maybe it's a new kind of art form. Maybe we should stop
No,
and
you're
start
back.
again because
You're
this is.
back on now.
I'm back.
You're
Oh,
back.
so yeah,
You're back, baby.
so that's the real thing that in my utopia.
Off
Now I'm out again. He's talking about communism. Shut it down. We need a delay. We need to put the beep
They've got
switch
the
on it.
sensor, yeah, with the beep switch. Totally. They've got the
He said
sensor cutting it
communism.
out. Well, what you got to do, man, is just anticipate what you're going to say a few seconds ahead of time and do the motions for the words that are like 3 or 4 words ahead. Then it'll all sync
That
right on up.
would be a real talent.
That would be a real talent. I hear where you were going though. Wait, you
God,
didn't do
I'm
it.
just saying that would be a real talent now. Oh God. This is really delayed. We should start and stop.
And now
This
you're
is
back.
ridiculous.
Now you're back.
No.
Amazing. How does he do it? This is
Well,
like
that's the robots are saying. Oh, he's talking about pointless crap. He's not.
no, they were just like luring you just far enough until you're like, okay, let's quit. And then they're like, okay, catch it up. So then you keep going. And then as soon as you
Yeah,
start
that's
making
another-
a good point,
He said
delay
quit. Okay, catch him back up.
yeah. We actually we used to have a guy back when I lived in Venice. There was a really nice older man who lived downstairs. And he probably wasn't older at the time, but when you're in your 20s, everyone's older. He was a few decades older than us, but he had this amazing conversational ability that actually I've known a few people to have, where they're like super talkers. They talk you into just oblivion till your eyes start blinking a little bit, but they have this amazing sense for when you've had enough and you're about to wrap it up, and they like have these conversational techniques where they'll like suddenly switch, or like they'll change the energy or something to sort of catch you back just as you're sort of like, all right, well, yeah, they'll sort of switch something, and all of a sudden you're like hooked back in for another minute or two. And I don't think they do it on purpose, but it's like this sort of lifetime of subconscious techniques, but always with good warm energy.
Yeah, I have an ability. I could talk forever, and it's been something I've had to learn how to control, because
is that an internal monologue telling you to control it, or have you actually had external people be like, you talk too much, bring it in?
Not so bluntly as that, but yeah, no, I've gotten indications that, like, other people.
Wrap it up. It's like the
button, Chappelle. Wrap it up, B.
What? I don't know about that. Sorry for not being up to date on 15-year-old cultural references. It's not 15 years old by now, is it?
I bet that is 15 years old.
No kidding.
That was Chappelle's show, yeah.
That's probably 10 years
old. That was
old.
Before he went away and came back.
Maybe that was 15. I don't know. Well, I feel like I'm glad that we figured this all out. So you got gear. Gear is part of the thing, but gear, I would say, is also stultifying, because like this morning, there's a couple pieces of gear I need, and you can get like 80 or 90% of the way, and then you're just like, oh, but then there's those bad reviews that say, is the thing plug and play? Do I need to install? Am I going to need to install the software, or can I work without software? Is it just, is the USB ports things? It's just like, and then you have to bail out. And it's depression, and then it's just waiting for you again. That same hill is waiting for you at the other end of the thing. So then sometimes it's like, we'll just buy 6 things. They're all free returns, but I don't want to buy 6 things, and it cost me $1,000, and then I got to unwrap everything and deal with returns, and it's just. But I mean, also I'm complaining about kind of a luxury, because in the old days you just go to the store and you find the thing on the shelf, and you'd be like, okay, I guess this is the thing. So we have more options, more choice, more information now. But God, it's like a hurdle. Painful.
Oh my God. Yeah. I feel like so, and also the other hurdle, which I think is in the same realm, is learning how to use the gear. I had some friends over. I'd set up, a bunch of recording equipment, and some musicians came over, and we were playing, and it was great. And it was just like, starting the way you said it, 90% of the setup, like I can get this, the vocals are plugged in. I have another room where people are doing this, but it's not like I'm not doing this every day. So like all the kinks are not worked out. So 90% of the ability to capture everything and ready to go and make it sound good. But then there's one thing comes up, and I'm also playing. I'm also a musician. I'm singing and stuff, and trying to get in the mode of singing and performing and being with the group, while if the engineering was completely taken care of, if it was sort of just like flip it on and then forget about it, that'd be one thing. But because it's only working 90%, it takes me 100% out of it. And then there are these times where people are like, don't worry about it, just relax, we don't want you to be uptight. And then like 4 seconds later, we do an amazing take, because of course we all relaxed. We didn't worry about the recording. And then like 2 people say, you were recording that, right? And it's just like, no, we decided not to. And they're literally people saying, what's the point of all of this stuff if you're not even recording? It's just like 10 seconds ago, you told me not to worry about it. And that's my ignorance as a producer, to sort of like to think that's a real offer to say, don't worry about it. But it seems like a rock and a hard place.
Well, it is, and it's impossible. I mean, I think that's the ignorance, if there is one, or the way we fool ourselves periodically, is by pretending that we can be in front and in back of the camera at the same time, or the microphone at the same time. And there's a reason that every established art form that has to do with production in this way has a in front of the camera and behind the camera. You've got your performance, you've got your director, and you can't really do both. I mean, with a lot of extra infrastructure, you can do both. Or if you're just sort of like, sort of digital native about it and you're gunslinging and you set up your thing, you press record and you whatever, and you're just like, uh, making it up as you go, and that kind of energy, which I think is more typical of young people who are just like not intimidated by the technology or the devices or whatever and just having fun with it, like we were when we were younger. But like once you're established or you're trying to do something organized and bringing a band together or like doing a TV shoot or whatever it is, you just can't do both. You can't, you know. You can't, and it's like doing these TV shoots for me. I can't, I can't if I'm trying to interview someone and be present and thinking about, wait a second, it's the wrong angle. It's just it all goes crumbling.
Yeah, it's really that kind of multitasking. It really makes everything suffer, and there's something about it too that's extra painful because it's invisible multitasking. It's all just in your head. Like when you look over and you notice, oh, I don't know if this camera angle is going to work. That doesn't seem like, no one's going to be like, oh, he's multitasking on that right now. It's more just like you're distracted
Yeah,
and you're not completely present. And it's a really really tricky thing. But this whole idea of young people who are gunslinging, I do. So I guess I wonder. I mean, I'm doing all this stuff. Like I'm setting up multi-camera stuff with the hopes that with the hopes that I can get better and better at it enough to the point where I can do much of it myself. I'm really hopeful I can find somebody who can help push buttons and do stuff. But like tonight, I'm having a friend over, and hopefully, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, so I think he understands that, like, yeah, there's going to be some technical wrangling, so there's going to be some patience as we figure it out together. But um, I haven't given up on the idea. But maybe it's crazy. But then what do you do? Like I can't. The
right.
kind of thing I want to do is all the time. I want to start just like grabbing stuff and grabbing stuff and grabbing stuff. And I guess I just still have a hope that
Maybe it's a thing
get
you can
good
practice.
enough.
Yeah, maybe it's a thing you can practice and you just like struggle through it a bunch of times to where you get good enough, and maybe it's you get enough gear, you decide to get the thing where the actual physical panel with the buttons that you can push, and maybe you do enough practice that you can just sort of be like, okay, now I'm going to play this, and now here, let me hit that button, and now go into my other thing. It is coming in and out a little bit, but I guess maybe people do it. The other thing you could do is you could experiment with just like, is there someone to hire, some young whippersnapper or some established whippersnapper, and you just are like, let me try one session with somebody doing all that stuff. I mean, one problem for me is even though I have been recently hiring people a little bit for these TV shoots, I still can't turn off the part of my brain that's like, I'm pretty sure that's the wrong angle. I mean, you know what I mean? Or like, or
Yeah.
it could be more vain than that. It could be me going like, I don't really love that angle of me. Like I wish this was, or like we're talking in an interview setting and they're getting the interview subject nice and front on, but I think this is going to be mostly my ear. I can't fully turn that off. Maybe once you're at the level of having just like enough angles and pros and whatever, you just can turn that off and be like, they're going to figure it out and make it work. But you know, that seems like a long way off. That it wouldn't be some level of bootstrapping and trying to get by, and then it's taken up part of my cycles, worrying about it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting challenge, and the idea of doing it, just the fact that it seems you need other people. For me, for the kind of stuff that I want to do,
Yeah,
just putting the camera and just like doing me shooting me with one camera with no technology and just a camera and just like I don't know what. That is not what I feel
called to.
called to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's great. I love people who do it well, and it's a cheap way. You don't need any gear. You just a phone. You're all good. But it's like I like bringing people together. I want to just try to
yeah.
do more different kind of things, and so it's
And that
interesting.
probably does require, yeah, that's what I was going to say is maybe that sort of gunslinging approach, what's been so good for the TikTokers of the world is like what seems different about TikTok is this whole aesthetic of like high production value is not even valued. It's almost like anti high production value. Just stick a camera up, and if it's shaky and it's whatever, but it's real and it's funny and authentic, or whatever it is, then that's the medium, you know. And then there are people who have sort of gone high production value with this sort of vlogging, straight to camera type of thing, and that works too. Or like a musician who, you know, sets a camera on themselves and like, let me show you how to play a certain something, or let me break down this song, or just react to a song. Anyway, all those sort of like one camera, pretty simple, straightforward setups seems like something you could do. But anytime you try to bring complexity into it, like you're saying, convening sort of a community or a group of players or whatever, or doing something just more complex, like you know, a shootout in the world, that's a lot harder. Maybe, you know, the other thing about gunslinging is maybe you always have a buddy who you could be like, hey, will you grab the camera and follow us along? And then that's sort of what it's harder to find when you're at this stage. You know, you don't have a buddy who's just like, grab a camera and come shoot this and explore. You can play around the camera and figure out how to get all these cool shots. I mean, that. I remember that being sort of a rude awakening for me, as I went into my 30s. That there wasn't just always a friend around who could just, hey, come along for the ride, and you know. And I kept trying to harass my friends to do that with very limited success. You did that one April. You came to town and we did that for each other. Grabbed a camera and followed each other around. Yeah.
Yeah, if your passion is to shoot things, I think there's probably it's a much easier deal to say like, let me capture you. But if you are the person who wants to be in front of the camera, then it's sort of less of a great deal for especially the person who
Yeah.
is good to do the capturing. That person can do anybody. So
Yeah.
that's a so back to this question. I want to ask this question about back to question of gear. When do you have any rules of thumb when it comes to when it's okay to, like, how do you know when it's okay to push buy
To pull a
on
trigger.
the thing, pull the trigger on purchases, gear? Is there any sort of like guiding?
No, I mean, it's interesting for you to ask that because it, excuse me, it highlights that no, I don't have any. It's just different. You know, sometimes it's fatigue. It's decision
Yeah.
fatigue. And it's just like, I can't. It's like sometimes the process of doing the research and reading reviews is almost like trying to resolve a fight between your kids where you didn't witness the infraction, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. You didn't know what happened, and you have to.
Yeah. You have to adjudicate the conflict, and you're just like, this is, you know, I don't want to be doing this right now.
Uh,
And so sometimes I'll just fatigue out and click buy and be like, God, you know, I'll try it. Um, yeah, I don't know. Do you? Do you have a rule of thumb?
well, that really rings true. It rings true today. Like and I think it might always ring true. Maybe it always does. Maybe that's always what happens is I'll be obsessive. I will obsess on one piece of gear pretty much at a time, and it could be I could obsess about it for 2 years. I was the
Is a
keyboard which I
specific
bought.
piece of gear by a specific manufacturer, or like I got to get a camera and you're obsessed about getting a camera, or is it like
Well,
the camera by so and
in
so?
the in the case of the keyboard that I see in your background that I had first,
Right. I played at your house and I
I
fell for it there. Yes.
I played that at a music store, not thinking anything about buying a keyboard, but I played it and I was just like, oh my god, this is a different thing, and I got hooked on it for 2 years, and I would read reviews about it. I kept like looking at the prices. I was just like, I would just like have electric tingles just thinking about it, and finally at one point, after 2 years, I finally bought it. But then it's unfortunate that as soon as I buy something, my mind looks for, it's like there's a little pocket in my brain that's like, what's the thing that you want to obsess over? And so once you buy it, then it's just like, okay, we have a new space opening up for the thing that you're going to obsess about.
Yeah.
And I may have just closed that loop today because of this Blackmagic ATEM switcher was the thing for a while, and I got the one and realized I needed to get the other one, and so then I switched it and got that, but then I realized, oh, I needed to get the hardware, so it was incomplete. The thing was not complete until today.
But
And now
you say you close that loop, but that just means that is now the space is opening up again.
yeah, I'm gonna. So right now it's empty. I don't know what the next thing is.
That's kind of fun. Is that
It
that's
is
a fun
kind of
moment?
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think gear is a fun thing to obsess about.
Oh yeah.
And it probably would be where I've gone over to friends' studios, not too many. There's not a lot of people in this town who have more stuff than me, but some people do. And whenever I go to their places, I'm just, I, I feel this is an embarrassment of riches. Like, and they have every
Yeah.
pedal that I've lusted over, and they have all these keyboards and all of these different things, and it's just everything's still shiny and it's just gear just everywhere, gear and all kinds of guitars and stuff. And I'm just like I'm in rapture of all this stuff, but at the same time it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's like too much candy for my
Yeah.
my tingly.
I had for my tingly bits. I had
my tingly bits. Yeah,
I had
exactly.
I had a interesting thing happen recently where I had a camera. I had to rent the camera for a shoot, and it's 10 times fancier camera than I ever have played with myself. And I was very aware that when I was younger, I would have been like, ooh, and just picking it up. Or just like using it, playing with it, figuring out the knobs. And I had a very different impulse now, which is, I didn't even want to take it out. I didn't even want to, I'm like, I want someone who knows how to work that to work it. And I felt a little disappointed in myself for that. Like I should be all about this, but I don't know. I feel that just even in a work context, when you realize something has gotten so complicated that you used to understand something, now it's gotten so specialized and complex that you don't really. And there's a point where that level of understanding is in reach enough that I want to sort of get my way there. And there's a point where you're like, that's too far. That's too far. That's such a vast and complex rabbit hole or set of rabbit warrens that I'm going to stay out of that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just reminded when you were talking about that of at one point the thing in my little pocket was this Moog. It was called the Moog Subsequent. And it was a keyboard that was a duophonic. You could play two notes, and you could, and there was just all these kinds of knobs, and the sound was so buttery and beautiful. And I played it, but it's really complicated. But what's interesting is that I played it a few times. I went into a music store. The reason I got obsessed about it because I put the headphones on and I played it. I was like, this is the ultimate buttery sounding synthesizer, and I was in love. And I just would play it, and then I'd come back to the music store several times, and I played it, and I was just in love. And then it was just too expensive. I couldn't afford it. And then a year passed, and I still had it in my mind, and I went and I played it another time. And for some weird reason, it had gotten too complicated for me. Like a year before, I knew how, in fact, there was one time when I was sort of not too loud, but I was over in a corner, there was no one there, and I started playing it without headphones because there's no headphones. And then the guy from the store came over and he was just like, "What are you doing? This is amazing. This is really cool." Maybe he was just trying to sell it, but it did sound cool. I mean, the fact is that I was really making the thing sound awesome. And but then like a year later, it's like I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
was out of reach. Like I didn't know how to do it anymore. And so then it fell out of my spot because
Yeah.
it had gotten too complicated for me to sort of like know like what's the in here.
Yeah.
Whereas when I
That's
first
interesting.
played it, I was
Well, you're actually reminding me
went
of
quiet.
being a key. Oh, well, I still hear myself.
Oh, sorry. Could you start with you reminded me?
You remind me. I think there's some song that is, and I'm sure there's lots of songs. Um, there were, yeah. You reminded me that back in the days, being a keyboard player, that was one of my great weaknesses. Was I never was that interested in tweaking the keyboard and tweaking the sounds. It was a weakness of mine that I felt appropriate shame in various band settings because and I even got some pressure from bandmates of like, dude, you gotta like figure out your sounds and master your whatevers. And I was just like, I don't know, can I just push EP2 and like Oregon 1 and piano? I just had no interest. I liked how the sounds sounded, but I wanted someone else to set them up and then give me my presets, and I could hit the preset and play. And I still like that, actually. Even this wonderful keyboard, I've once, I think, tweaked the sounds, and otherwise I've just gone with the sounds that were on it that the last guy who sold it to me had already set. I just have that kind of laziness. So maybe this is actually a lifelong thing, but I think somehow with video it felt different. I think I would have always figured out the video equipment or the cameras or whatever, and somehow this thing was just like, this thing knocked me it was just so far out of range that I just was like, okay, hands off, I'm good. But I think we've solved it now. So I think the answer
The
is
subject of gear
buy all the gear. What is the subject?
solved.
What is the answer?
Subject. The,
Buy all the gear. It's not buy all the gear. It's like such a trap to buy all the
not.
gear, right? And you can buy all the gear
Yeah,
and then
because
never actually do anything with it, and then you just got a more and more expensive source of shame building up around you.
yeah, I feel like there should be some sort of a rule, which I would probably regret if it was imposed on me from outside. But something like you gotta make 10 things out of the thing you buy that you're willing to put in front of people before you can buy the next thing.
Is your gear mostly? That's a good rule, by the way. That's a great rule. Is your gear mostly music gear or like recording gear? I guess it's
Well,
a mix. It's
it was
also
always
some video and whatnot.
yeah, it was all music and recording. Like cables you have to get all this kind of crap. But then yeah, lately, I got a GoPro and I got some lights and like all these kinds of adapters that you need to like put things in places in this ATEM. This video switcher thing is the latest thing. So
Maybe on one of these future ones, you should hook up a video switcher and then you can just be switching around as we're talking.
yeah, and also and maybe actually that's an interesting idea, and we could talk about all the complexity. I could show the different things, and I'd be like, well, and I have this, and then sits the camera.
Yeah.
That should be possible soon.
Or you could just switch to the camera that's on your drum set and do a drum solo for 5 minutes, and then switch to
the drum and then run over to the drums.
I can switch here.
Run.
All right. Talk to you. End broadcast.